Hey, this is Tony from Fantasy Quick Hits on your Week 10 matchups. Going to jump right into things with you this evening, and we're going to start with what are the early games with the Lions versus the Steelers. We'll start on the Lions side of the ball. At the quarterback position, Jared Goff. You're going to bench him. You can't play Jared Goff. DeAndre Swift, he'll be involved enough to play. He's a high floor due to his role in the passing game. Been mostly matchup proof. I would roll him out as a low RB2. Aren't any wide receivers here we're even interested in on the Detroit side of the ball. Hawkinson, you can't bench this guy. He's a top five weekly start due to his target volume. With the Steelers, with Big Ben, we found out kind of a shocker this weekend. He's going to be missing this week. Kyle Rudolph will be stepping in, even against the Lions. I don't trust him. Najee Harris is a no-brainer. Deontay Johnson, even with Rudolph, I'm not sure you can bench this guy. I'm going to roll him out against that Detroit Lion defense, especially now with Claypool not playing. He's going to be a target monster in this game. Pratt Fryermuth, he's looking great, but I don't trust him without Ben. I would leave him on your bench for this week. If you need him in a pinch, you can roll him out as a low end tight end one, maybe a high end tight end two. Jaguars versus the Colts. On the Jaguar side of the ball, Trevor Lawrence. The Colts are actually the best matchup for opposing quarterbacks. And if there was ever a week for you to start Trevor Lawrence, this is it. I would start him in a two quarterback league or in super flex leagues. Other than that, I probably still wouldn't trust him. James Robinson is going to be a game time decision. Either way, I don't know that I would trust him this week versus a very strong run defense. If Robinson plays, I'm not sure what to expect with the heel injury. Just very difficult to trust this week. I don't trust or look for any Jag wide receivers. There isn't anyone here in this game that you're going to start. Dan Arnold on the other hand, he does have a great matchup this week for tight end. He is commanding a strong target share in this offense, and I would fire him up as a high end tight end two, low end tight end one. For the Colts, you've got to love Carson Wentz. He is a lock for 2 to 3 touchdowns versus a weak Jaguars pass defense. Top 10 play again this week. Jonathan Taylor, not much I can say here. He's a top running back, maybe top three on a weekly basis. Naheem Hines, we're not going to get sucked into some of his stat lines in prior weeks. He just is not startable right now. Michael Pittman continuing to command a strong target share. He's a top five option this week. Zach Pascal, he is becoming a high floor wide receiver in this offense. I feel comfortable with him as a mid wide receiver three. T.Y. Hilton is looking like he's going to be a go, but he's not in any of my lineups. And then at the tight end position, we just don't have anybody there who's startable. Let's move on to the Browns versus the Patriots. With the Browns, we'll start at the quarterback position with Baker Mayfield. And New England has been one of the most difficult matchups for opposing quarterbacks. I'm going to keep Mayfield on my bench this week. Dearness Johnson is going to get the start with Nick Chubb missing due to COVID. And I would look for the Browns to build their game plan around Dearness Johnson this week. He's going to get plenty of touches. I would start him as a strong RB2. Jarvis Landry, he does has some value, but I just don't like him in this matchup. He's more of a flex start. He does give you a decent floor because he gets those targets, but just not enough upside. His ceiling is also very low. I do like Rashard Higgins, but he's not trustworthy enough to play in your lineup. And then at the tight end position, unless something happens to either Hooper or Njoku, they continue to eat each other's values. So can't really start one. Plus, it's a really difficult matchup this week. On Patriots side, Mac Jones only startable in maybe two quarterback or super flex leagues. Otherwise, you're going to sit him against this Browns defense. Damian Harris is out this week. Ramondre Stevenson is interesting. He looks like he's going to be healthy. He's coming back from that concussion protocol and should get the start this week. If he starts, I do like him as a low end RB2, high end RB3. But if we've learned anything about Bill Belichick and the Patriots, is we just never know what to expect. So just kind of keep an eye on whether or not he is going to get the start and just be ready for any type of change with Bill Belichick at the running back position. Jacoby Myers, again, just an average type wide receiver. He's going to give you that middling type stat line, 4 to 5 catches for 40 to 50 yards. At least that's my prediction. So if unless you need that in your lineup, he's not startable. You're not going to do anything with the receivers. And at the tight end position, they've just been too unpredictable, and so you're going to sit Hunter Henry in this matchup. Falcons versus the Cowboys. On the Falcons side of the ball, I absolutely love Matt Ryan this week versus the Cowboys. He's also a great pick for DFS. I see him as a top 10 start. Mike Davis has been a major disappointment this year. You're going to sit him. Cordell Patterson, though, he's going to continue to be more and more involved in this offense. He has a real defined role that continues to grow. Start him with confidence. He's going to get his touches and he's going to get his targets. Russell Gage is also looking interesting. He's healthy, coming back from that groin injury. He's resuming his role as the de facto number one wide receiver in this offense with Ridley gone. And I love him in this start against the Cowboys. See him as a high end wide receiver 3 until we kind of see him establish a real role where we know we can trust him. But there is a lot of upside in what could be a high scoring game. Kyle Pitts in this matchup. Pitts could be the number one tight end on the week. I see this as a Kyle Pitts game. I would start him as a top 2, top 3 option. For the Cowboys, Prescott, he's a top 5 option in this game almost on a weekly basis. So he's going to be in your lineup. Zeke also weekly top 5 running back. Wouldn't start Tony Pollard unless you're hurting at running back or you have someone on bye. I mean, you could do worse than him. He does continue to provide a decent floor, but he also has a low ceiling. Zeke gets all of those goal line touches, and he is the number one running back in that offense. Mari Cooper and CD is a tough defense, but I think you're going to start both of these guys. Both are solid to high end wide receiver 2 with upside. And then I would definitely roll both of them out this week. Cedric Wilson, not startable. And Dalton Schultz, I would roll him out. With his volume, he continues to be a top 10, top 12 option. Saints versus the Titans. On the Saints side, we start with the quarterback Trevor Siemian, who got the nod again this week. He did look better last week than expected, and it's a very nice spot starting again for him this week against a mostly soft Titans pass defense. It doesn't look like Taysom Hill is getting as involved as we initially expected, but he is going to have some looks, and he is a decent start. That's Trevor Siemian, I would say, in super leagues, in 2 QB leagues. I would trust him somewhere in that 15 to 20 range in this matchup. Mark Ingram takes a major boom with Kamara out. I like him as a high end RB3. Lots of volume. He's going to get plenty of touches against this Titans defense. Also gets those goal line carries. Callaway has some decent upside versus this Titans pass D that's been very friendly to opposing wide receivers, but he still belongs on your bench. Troutman, not an option. On the Titans side, Tannehill has another tough matchup this week against a very stiff Saints pass defense. I place him in, again, just like I said with Simeon, maybe in that 15 to 20 range. You're only starting him in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. AP and Jeremy McNichols. If you own one of these RBs, you're going to continue to stash them, but neither of them is really startable. Saints are also a very tough matchup for running back, so sit these guys. AJ Brown is turning into the volume monster that we expected in the preseason. He is a weekly must start. Julio Jones, I don't know if you saw, but was just placed on IR. And there are just too many tight ends in this rotation. We're going to continue to stay away from them. Let's move on to the Bills versus the Jets. On the Bills side, Josh Allen, he was down 2 starting offensive linemen last week, and I'm going to look for him to get right this week. The Buffalo Bills are talking about bringing more of a complementary type offense, and if you have him, you're definitely starting him. Zach Moss is working his way back from that concussion. Although it's a great matchup, this might be the week to start Devin Singletary. With the Bills offense looking for more balance, I like Singletary this week as an RB2. versus a very suspect Jets run D. Stephon Diggs, this is a tough matchup for opposing wide receivers, but you're going to start him. You're not going to think twice about Diggs' weekly start. Cole Beasley, I like him in this spot as a low end wide receiver three with upside. And I also see this as a bounce back game for Emmanuel Sanders versus the Jets. You're going to start him as a high end wide receiver three. Dawson Knox, you're going to roll this guy out. The Jets have been very, very weak for opposing tight ends, and I like him a lot in this matchup. He's healthy and he is active. On the Jet side, Mike White, this is just a brutal matchup for White. Bills are ranked number one against quarterbacks. You're going to leave this guy on your bench. Michael Carter, he this guy isn't sniffing the my starting lineup in on any of my rosters. I'm going to sit him this week against a very, very tough Bills defense. Corey Davis has a questionable tag after a full practice on Friday. Doesn't matter. You're going to sit him. Jamison Crowder, sit him. Denzel Mims, sit him. Elijah Moore, maybe the highest upside on this roster, but targets might be impacted a little bit with the possible return of Davis. Either way, you're going to sit them. Tight ends, no. Bucks versus Washington, Bucks side of the ball, Tom Brady and company. If you own any of these guys, they're active. You're playing them. You're not going to sit any of your Bucks. On the Washington side, Taylor Heineke is a surprisingly soft pass defense with the Bucks, but Heineke has not looked good. He's just too inconsistent to trust. Won't be on any of my starting rosters. Antonio Gibson looks like he could be getting healthy. Did lose that injury designation. I just want to see it first before I plug him into my lineup. If he is healthy and he looks good, we're going to roll him out in future weeks. JD McKissick, he led the team in receiving in week 8. I love him in this matchup. You're going to start him as a maybe a low end RB2, high end RB3. Scary Terry, no brainer. If you have him, you start him. He's a weekly start. And Logan Thomas is not going to be active. So Ricky Seals Jones is going to get the nod this week at tight end, and you're going to start him as a tight end one in this matchup. Move on to the Panthers versus the Cardinals. On the Panthers side, we'll start at quarterback. We've got PJ Walker. No, we're not starting PJ Walker. Christian McCaffrey's getting healthy. If you have him, you're definitely starting him. DJ Moore, unfortunately, cannot be trusted because of PJ Walker. You got to sit DJ Moore unless you don't have any better options. DJ Moore just cannot be trusted right now. Robbie Anderson, I don't even know if this guy's even rosterable anymore. And you're not going to start any of the tight ends on the Panther offense. Cardinals side, Kyler Murray, still not sure he's going to be a true game time decision. If he's active, you start him. It's a no brainer. James Conner, even in this matchup, the volume will be there, and I see him as a mid to high end RB2. DeAndre Hopkins is still having issues with that hamstring. I'm leaving him on my bench this week, especially with Murray dealing with an injury. I want to see Hopkins make it through a game before I plug him into my roster. Kirk and Rondale Moore, I'm not starting those wide receivers in this matchup, and I would also stay away from Zach Ertz this week against this Panther defense. Vikings versus the Chargers. On the Viking side, start with Kirk Cousins. He's been in a little bit of a rut. I don't like him very much in this matchup versus a very, very tough Chargers pass defense. He's probably in that 20 range, maybe 20 to 25 range. That being said, with Justin Jefferson, he's an elite talent. You've got to start Jefferson no matter what. I'm not playing Adam Thielen this week. KJ Osborne, we're moving on. Of course, Dalvin Cook is a must start every week. Doesn't matter the matchup. And Tyler Conklin, I don't trust him at all this week as well. Chargers side with Justin Herbert. It's a very positive matchup. I like him this week as a top 8 option. Austin Eckler, top 5 running back potential. Great matchup for running backs. Keenan Allen, he's going to get that high target volume. He's a weekly start. Mike Williams also has a nice matchup this week, and this could be a get right game for Mike Williams. I'd risk him this week to start with huge upside. Just a really good matchup. Jared Cook, we're going to sit. It's just too risky to put into your lineup. Move on to the Seahawks versus the Packers. Russell Wilson is finally back, so you can start him with confidence Alex Collins is going to get the start, but I think the team is really going to lean on Russ and this passing offense. So I'm sitting Alex Collins. DK, yeah, you're starting DK. Lockett, he's locked and loaded, no pun intended. But he is definitely going to be a boomer bust type receiver, even with Russ back. You can put him as a boomer bust wide receiver too. Packers looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to be active, and this is going to be a week for that offense to get right again. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon will look for Green Bay to get Jones more involved this week with Rodgers back. I see this as a get right game for Jones, and Dillon is more of a flex. Devontae Adams is always a top three option. Lazard and Cobb, I'm not starting this week. You're not starting a tight end either. Eagles versus the Broncos. Let's start with Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Very, very tough matchup this week for Jalen. I do not like him as anything more than a quarterback in that 15 to 20 range, mostly because of the floor he gives you with the rushing. But unless you're in a 2 QB or a super flex league, I'm not playing Jalen Hurts this week. At the running back with Scott, Howard, and Gainwell, I'm going to continue to stay away from this committee backfield. Denver's been very, very tough against the run, and I just don't trust anyone here enough to plug him into my lineup. Devontae Smith, he is the Eagles' number one receiver. It's a neutral matchup. I'm just not sure I see him doing a whole lot this week. I would start him though in kind of a high-end flex play. Rager and Watkins, too risky. They're not startable. Dallas Goddard. It is a brutal matchup this week for Goddard. However, he is still a top 10 option. He's a big part of this offense. The only thing he's probably closer to the 10 side than the one side. For the Broncos, we'll start with Teddy Bridgewater. You're going to sit in this week versus the Eagles. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. I do like both of the running backs in this matchup, but they do kind of cancel out each other's value a little bit. I see them more as a low end three or flex play. Cortland Sutton. The Eagles have been really tough for opposing wide receivers, so I'm going to sit Sutton this week. Jerry Judy. One of the weaknesses in this Eagles pass D is versus the slot, and so I like Judy this week as a solid wide receiver three. Tim Patrick. I just can't trust Patrick right now with Judy back. Noah Fant will be active for this game, and I like him versus this Eagles pass D, which has been weak against opposing tight ends. Move on to the Chiefs and the Raiders. For the Chiefs, of course, you're going to start Patrick Mahomes. He's always a top five quarterback potential each week. Darrell Williams looks like he's going to get the start one more week. It's a nice matchup, but I see him more as a high end RB3 due to his low efficiency. Tyreek Hill must start. Mecole Hardman, I don't think he's involved enough. I think this offense really is going to revolve around Hill and Kelsey, so I'm not starting him. I'm passing on Robinson. Travis Kelsey is a top two, top three option every week. For the Raiders, it's a great matchup for Carr. You're going to roll him out this week as a top 10 option. Josh Jacobs has a great matchup. I like him this week as a solid RB2. Kenyon Drake, he is more involved in this offense than we thought he would be. He is getting some of that volume in the passing game, so I look to him as kind of a low end RB3, maybe a flex with Jacobs fully healthy. Hunter Renfrow is now the de facto number one receiver in this offense, so I like him a lot in this game. It could be a shootout. I see him as a low to mid wide receiver too. And then Darren Waller, you're going to, of course, start him as a top three, top four tight end. Move on to the Monday night game, which is the Rams versus the 49ers. We'll start with the Rams. Matthew Stafford, can't bench Stafford. He's a top five start. Darrell Henderson, I like him in this matchup as a low end RB1, high end RB2. Cooper Kupp, 100%. You're starting Cooper Kupp. Robert Woods has a torn ACL. Many of you already know that. He's out for the season. Move on to Van Jefferson. I loved Van Jefferson before the Woods injury. With the news of the injury to Woods, for me, Jefferson becomes a weekly wide receiver two in this pass happy offense with Stafford slinging it over the field. OBJ isn't ready yet. You can't plug him into your lineup. And then Tyler Higbee. We might see Higbee get some extra targets due to the injury to Woods. Either way, he's a low end tight end one, high end tight end two. For the 49ers, you cannot roll out Jimmy G this week versus the Cardinals defense. They've been brutal for opposing quarterbacks. ranking in the top three. Elijah Mitchell has a tough matchup this week versus the Rams D. He's going to get his touches, but I don't really see him as anything more than a low end RB3 against this defense. Debo Samuel, I'm not a super fan this week. Between the calf injury and lining up versus Jalen Ramsey, I'd really temper your expectations. He's more of a low end wide receiver, too, in this matchup. Brandon Ayuk is starting to come on. However, still not much more than a flex play. And George Kittle, if Kittle is active, which he seems to be trending, then you're going to play Kittle. That's a no brainer. That's it for our matchups. And this is Tony from Quick Hits on our Week 10 matchup report. Thank you.